o'clock. So 3 o'clock right now. I love it. Hi, how are you? Things are kind of glowing over there. That big light is kind of big. I don't want to. Weird. Well, all's well that ends well. Hi, it is good to see you. I think I'm going to go over here just a little bit. Just a little bit. I am going to say to you, good day. Wondrous day. And I've got to tell you that it is glorious out here in Atlanta, Georgia. To both you in the northern hemisphere, actually northern United States, happy day. Did you out Jupiter and Saturn doing their crisscross last night at the Great Conjunction? I did. You today maybe going to need a little bit of Kleenex. You might also need multiple colors. I would love to see what some of you choose to put into the world to verbal to visual today. I would love for you to send it out to me, and I would love to share it. And so let's, because it is far, far, far too good of a day to postpone the reading. Last reading yesterday, we enjoyed, well, actually didn't quite enjoy, but we said goodbye to Lucy. We got picked up by a weird lady. She had a young boy named Bryce who came in her garden and swore that he was going to take Edward away from this terrible growing job that Edward had not asked for. I think his name was Clyde, if I'm not mistaken, during that period of time. The very last thing that we read yesterday was when the last nail was out, forward into Bryce's arms, the rabbit felt a rush of relief, and the feelings of relief by one of joy. And perhaps, he thought, it is not too late, after all, for me to be. And so we came to a moment in which Bryce had brought salvation to Edward. Now, I'm taking a look at this place, and I am looking at that, and I'm saying, shed? He was working in a garden, so maybe this is where he leaves all after he does his work. But Bryce did not seem like too old of a kid, right? And so, without further ado, I come to get you for Sarah Ruth. I said, you don't know Sarah Ruth. She's my sister. She's sick. She had her baby doll made out of china. She loved that baby doll, but he broke it. He was drunk and stepped on that baby's head and smashed it into 100 million pieces. Them pieces were so small, I couldn't make it together. I couldn't. I tried, and I tried. I tried. At this point in his story, Bryce stopped walking, took his head, and wiped at his nose with the back of his hand. Sarah Ruth ain't had nothing to play with since. He won't. He says she don't need nothing. He says she don't need nothing because she ain't gonna live. But he don't know. Bryce, he don't know, he said. Who he was unclear to Edward. What was clear, being taken to a child to make up for a loss of a doll. A doll. How Edward loathed dolls. And he thought and to be thought of as a likely replacement for a doll. But still, it was. He had to admit a highly preferable alternative to hanging by his ears from a post. I would agree with that. The house in which Bryce and Sarah Ruth lived was so small and crooked, he did not believe at first that it was a house. He mistook it instead for a chicken coop. Inside, there were 2 beds and a carriage. and not much else. Bryce laid Edward at the foot of one of the beds and then lit the lamp. Sarah Ruth, you got to wake up now, honey. I brung you something. He took the harmonica out of his pocket and the beginning of a simple melody. The little girl sat up in her bed and immediately started to cough. Bryce put his hand. It's all right, he told her. That's okay. She was young, maybe 4, maybe 5, and she had blonde hair. And even in the poor light of the lamp, Edward could see that her eyes were the same gold-flecked brown as Bryce's. That's right, said Bryce. You go on ahead, cough all you need. Sarah Ruth obliged him. She coughed and coughed and coughed. On the wall of the cabin, the kerosene light cast her trembling shadows. Small, the coughing was the saddest sound that Edward had ever heard. Sadder even than the mournful call of the whippoorwill. Finally, Sarah Ruth stopped. Bryce said, You want to see what I brung you? Sarah Ruth nodded. They closed her eyes. Now keep them closed. Bryce picked up Edward and held him so that he was standing straight at the end of the bed. All right now, you can open them. Sarah Ruth opened her eyes, and Bryce moved china legs and china arms so it looked as if he were dancing. Sarah Ruth laughed and clapped her. Grab it, she said. He's for you, honey, said Bryce. Sarah Ruth looked first at Edward and then at Bryce, back at Edward again, her eyes wide and disbelieving. He's yours, honey. Mine? Sarah Ruth was soon to discover rarely said more than one word at a time. Words, at least several of them strung together, made her cough. She limited herself, said only what needed to be said. Yours, said Bryce. I got 'em special for you, honey. This knowledge provoked another fit of coughing in Sarah Ruth, and she hunched over again. When the fit was done, she uncurled herself in her arms. That's right, said Bryce. He handed Edward to her. Baby, said Sarah Ruth. She went back and forth and back and forth and stared down at him and smiled. Never had Edward been cradled like a baby. Abilene had never done that, nor had Nellie, and most certainly Bull had not. Singular sensation to be held so gently and yet so fiercely, to be stared at with so much love. Edward, his china body flooded with warmth. You gonna give him a name, honey? Bryce asked. Jangle, said Sarah Ruth, without taking her eyes off Edward. Jangles, huh? That's a good name. I like that. Bryce patted Sarah Ruth on the head. She continued to stare down at Edward. Hush, she said to Edward as she ran forth. From the minute I first seen him, said Bryce, I knew he belonged to you. I said to myself, that rabbit is Ruth for sure. Jangles, murmured Sarah Ruth quietly. Could be one of my most favorite and most important moments. Little brother, looking out for little sister, bringing such a gift to them. Look at him playing harmonica. Look at that door wide open. I'm right. I remember them saying that. Outside the cabin, thunder cracked and then came rain falling on the tin roof. Sarah Ruth rocked Edward back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. So joyous today. Chapter 18. Box of buttons. Now I definitely know where the shack is, though. Bryce and Sarah Ruth had a father. Early the next night was gray and uncertain. Sarah Ruth was sitting up in bed coughing, and the father came home. He picked Edward up by one of them. I ain't never. It's a baby doll, said Bryce. No baby doll to me. Edward, hanging by one ear, was frightened. This, he was certain, was the man who crushed the heads of Jangles, said Sarah Ruth between coughs. She held out her arms. Said Bryce, he belongs to her. The father dropped Edward on the bed, and Bryce picked up the rabbit and handed him to Sarah Ruth. Doesn't matter anyway, said the father. It don't make no difference. None of it. It does so matter, said Bryce. You sass me, said the father. He raised his hand and slapped Bryce across his mouth and then turned and left the house. You ain't got to worry about him, said Bryce to Edward. He ain't nothing but a bully, and besides, he don't hardly ever come home. Fortunately, the father did not come back that day. Bryce went out to work, and Sarah Ruth spent the day in bed, holding Edward in her lap, the box filled with buttons. There it is. Pretty, she said to Edward as she lined up the buttons, arranged them into different patterns. Sometimes, when a coughing fit was particularly bad, she squeezed Edward so tight that he was in two. Also, in between coughing fits, she took to sucking one or the other of Edward's ears. Normally, Edward would have found that intrusive, clingy behavior, this sort of, it would have been very annoying. But there was something in Ruth. He wanted to take care of her. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to do more for her. End of the day, Bryce returned with a biscuit for Sarah Ruth and a ball of twine for Edward. Sarah Ruth held the biscuit in both hands, small, tentative bites. You eat that all up, honey. Let me hold Jangles, said Bryce. Him and eyes for you. Bryce took Edward off in a corner of the room, and with his pocket knife, he cut off lengths of twine and tied them to Edward's arms and feet, and then tied the twine to the sticks of wood. Oh, wait, 2 sticks of wood. See? All day I've been thinking about it, Bryce said. What we're going to do is make you dance. Sarah Ruth loves dancing. Mama used to her and dance her around the room. You eating that biscuit? Bryce called out to Sarah Ruth. Uh-huh, said Sarah. You hold on, honey. We got a surprise for you. Bryce stood up. Close your eyes, he told her. He took Edward over to the bed. Okay, you can open them now, Sarah Ruth. Sarah Ruth opened her eyes. Dance, Jangles. And then, moving the strings with the sticks with his one hand, Bryce made Edward dance and drop and sway. At the same time, with his other hand, he held on to the harmonica and played a bright and lively tune. Sarah Ruth laughed. Bryce carried his sister outside. I see a reconnection happening. Bryce carried his sister outside. He left Edward lying on the bed, the rabbit staring up at the smoke-stained ceiling. Thought again about having wings. If he had had wings, he thought, high above the world to where the air was clear and sweet, and he would take Sarah Ruth with him. He would carry her in his arms. High above the world, she would be able to breathe, said Sarah Ruth. She held out her arm. So Bryce held Sarah Ruth, and Sarah Ruth held Edward, and the 3 of them stood outside. Bryce said, you got to look. They were quite quiet for a long time. There, she said. Unstable. There, she said, and she pointed to a star streaking through the night sky. Bryce said, his voice high and tight, that's your star. You make a wish for anything you want. And even though it was a star, Edward wished on it too. All right. Now I'm falling in love with Sarah Ruth. Got chapter 19. I hope it's flipped around for you. It looks like strings on the ground. Edward looking down on the floor, almost looking like in his eyes. The days passed. The sun rose and set again and again and again. Sometimes the father came, sometimes he did not. Edward's ears became soggy and he didn't care. His sweater had almost completely unraveled and it didn't bother him. He was hugged half to death and it felt good. In the evenings, at the hands of Bryce, at the ends of the twine, Edward danced. 1 month passed, then 2, then 3. Sarah Ruth got worse. She refused to eat. And in the 6th month, she began to cough up blood. Her breathing became ragged and uncertain. She was trying to remember, in between breaths, what to do, what breathing might be. Breathe, honey. Over her and said, breathe, thought Edward from deep inside the well of her arms. Please, please breathe. Bryce stopped leaving the house. He sat at home all day and held Sarah Ruth in his lap and rocked her back and forth and sang to her. Bright morning in September. Sarah Ruth stopped breathing. Oh no, said Bryce. Oh, take a little breath, please. Edward had fallen out of Sarah Ruth's arms the night before, and she had not asked for him. So, face down on the floor, arms over his head, Edward listened as Bryce wept. He listened as the home and shouted at Bryce. He listened as the father wept. You can't cry, Bryce shouted. You have to cry. You never even loved her. You don't know nothing about love. I loved her, said the father. I loved her. Thought Edward. I loved her and now she's gone. How could this be? He wondered. How could he bear to live in a world without... The yelling between the father and the son continued. And then there was a terrible moment when the father insisted that Sarah, that she was his girl, his baby, and that he was taking her to be buried. She ain't yours, Bryce screamed. You can't take her. But the father was bigger and stronger, and he prevailed. He wrapped Sarah Ruth in a blanket and threw her away. The small house became very quiet. Edward could hear Bryce moving around, muttering to himself, and then the boy picked Edward up. Come on, Jankles, Bryce said. We're leaving. We're going to Memphis. Kind of a day that you would overcast, see where that road leads. Bryce, too now. Would you leave? Would you go? Didn't have much left, did he? He's so young. He's on his way. Chapter 20. How many dancing rabbits have you seen in your life? I said to Edward. I can tell you how many I seen. 1. You. That's how you and me are going to make some money. I seen it the last time I was in Memphis. Folks put on any kind of show right there on the street corner and people pay them for it. I seen it. Carrying Edward under one arm and talking to him the whole time. I tried to listen, but the terrible scarecrow feeling had come back. The feeling that he had when he was hanging by his ears in the old lady's garden. That nothing mattered. And that nothing would ever matter again. And not only did Edward feel hollow, every part of his china body hurt. He ached for Sarah Ruth. He wanted her to hold him. He wanted to dance for her. But it was not for Sarah Ruth. Edward danced for strangers on a dirty street corner in Memphis. Bryce played his harmonica strings, and Edward bowed and shuffled and swayed, and people stopped to stare and point and laugh. On the ground in front of him, Mama, said a small child. I want to touch him. He reached out his hand for Edward. No, said the mother, dirty. She pulled the child back. Edward, nasty, she said. A man was wearing a hat stopped and stared at Edward and Bryce. It's a sin to dance. And then after a long pause, he said, it's a particular sin for rabbits to dance. The man took off his hat and held it. He stood and watched the boy and the rabbit for a long time. Finally, he put his hat back on his head and walked away. Shadows lengthened. The sun became an orange, dusty ball low in the sky. Bryce started to cry. Tears and land on the pavement. But the boy did not stop playing his harmonica. He did not make Edward stop dancing. An old woman on a cane stepped up close to them. She stared at Edward with deep, dark eyes. Pellegrina? Thought the dancing rabbit. He nodded at him. Look at me, he said to her. His arms and legs jerked. Look at me. You got your wish. I have love. And it's a terrible thing. I'm broken. My heart is broken. Help me. The old woman turned and come back, thought Edward. Fix me. Bryce cried harder. He made Edward dance faster. When the sun was gone and the streets were dark, Bryce stopped playing his harmonica. I'm done now, he said. He'd fall to the pavement. I ain't gonna cry anymore. Bryce wiped his nose and his eyes with the back of his hand. He picked up the button inside it. We got us enough money to go get something to eat, he said. Come on, Jangles. And that's the end. It's the end. One more? Yep. Think? Okay, yeah, one more. Chapter 21. We got enough money. We need a little bit of hope today, right? My gosh. All right. The diner was called Neil's. The word was written in big letters that flashed on and off. Inside, it was warm and bright and smelled like fried chicken and toast and coffee. At the counter and put Edward on a stool next to him. He leaned the rabbit's forehead up against the counter so that he would not fall. What you gonna have, sugar? The waitress said to Bryce. Give me some pancakes, said Bryce. And I want steak too. I want a big old steak and some toast and some coffee. The waitress leaned forward and pulled at ears and then pushed him backwards so that she could see his face. This your rabbit? She said to Bryce. Yes'm. He belonged to my sister. Bryce wiped at his nose with the back of his hand. We're in show business, me and him, said the waitress. She had a name tag on the front of her dress. Marlene, it said. She looked at Edward's face, and then she let go of his ear, and he fell forward so that his head rested against the counter again. Go ahead, Marlene, thought Edward. Push me around. Do. What does it matter? I'm broken. Broken. The food came, and Bryce ate all of it without even looking. Marlene tucked the check under the coffee cup. Bryce picked it up and looked at it, and then shook his head. I'm going to reread that because I got interrupted. Sorry. The check under the coffee cup. Bryce picked it up and looked at it, and then shook his head. I ain't got enough, ma'am. Edward. Oh, I ain't got enough, he said to Edward. Ma'am, he said to Marlene when she filled up his coffee cup. I ain't got enough. What, sugar? I ain't got enough money. She stopped pouring the coffee and looked at him. You're going to have to talk to Neil about that. Neil, it turned out, you came in here hungry, right? He said to Bryce. Yes, sir, said Bryce. He wiped his nose with the back of his food, and I cooked it, and Marlene brought it to you, right? I reckon, said Bryce. You reckon? He brought the spatula down on the countertop with a thwack. Bryce jumped. Yes, sir. I mean, no, sir. I cooked it for you, said Neil. Yes, sir, said Bryce. He picked up the stool and held him close. Everyone in the diner had stopped eating. They were all staring at the boy and the rabbit and Neil. Only Marlene looked away. You ordered it. I cooked it. Marlene served it. You ate it, said Neil. I want my money. He tapped the spatula lightly on the counter. Bryce cleared his throat. You ever seen a rabbit dance? he said. How's that? Said Neil. You ever before in your life seen a rabbit? Bryce set Edward on the floor and started pulling the strings attached to his feet, making him do a slow shuffle. He put his harmonica in his mouth and played a song that went along with the dance. Somebody laughed. Bryce took the harmonica out of his mouth and said, he could dance some more if you want him to, and pay for what I ate. Neil stared at Bryce, and then, without warning, he reached down and grabbed hold of Edward. This is what I think of dancing rabbits, said Neil. And he swung Edward by the feet, swung him so that his head hit the real hard. There was a loud crack. Bryce screamed, and the world, Edward's world. I thought we were food. I thought everything was going to be okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Wow. What an amazing, amazing journey today. Not a very happy one. I'm so sorry about having such a sad day. But beauty at the same time, right? Beauty, kindness, sweetness. Man, he's a good kid. Bad dad. Trying to make life better for his, working hard and trying to be there. But then what happened? Boy, that steak must be good. And then a loud crack. Bryce screamed. In the world, Edward's black. Okay, so here's the deal. Today was right. Our time is close at hand, so we are going to breathe and let go. But I do want to say, I'm going to give you, okay? I'm going to give you a little bit of hope, and I'm super curious as to what this is. Do you recognize this picture? Do you recognize? Do you recognize it? Something's going to happen. It's going to happen. So, tomorrow, you should come back. Tomorrow, you should come and read with me. We are going to be reading tomorrow, and I think we're going to be reading on the 12th. And I believe, if I am not mistaken, we will finish the book on the 24th. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to thank you very much for joining. I want to thank you very much for participating. I want you to think a whole bunch of you would be the big brother or big sister to a young girl named Sarah Ruth. I want you to think about how Edward is, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful afternoon. It's a beautiful day out. Go what the weather's like and breathe that clean air. Have a great day. I love you. Now get out of here.